The Florida Panthers represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup Final, but how far off are the Islanders from catching the Panthers? Can they compete? We'll break all that down and more on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We have got a lot to get to on today's show. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, feel free to email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all year long during the offseason. That means hirings, firings, trade rumors, free agency, the draft. If it's happening to the Islanders, we'll have it covered for you here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. And it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. So it's a little bit of a thing that I think we naturally want to ask. We know the two teams in the Stanley Cup Finals. It's the Edmonton Oilers from the Western Conference, the Florida Panthers from the Eastern Conference. And look, the two teams are built differently. They have different formulations that they used in order to become a great team. And we know the Islanders right now cannot build a team the way the Oilers did. There is no Connor McDavid. There is no Leon Draisaitl. There is no Zach Hyman on the Islanders. The Islanders do not have any player who comes close to the star quality that those three guys produce. So, the Islanders can't really match that strategy to build a team, at least not in the short to moderate run, because they don't have that kind of star power. And let's face it, they don't have the cap space to add one guy like that, let alone 3 or 4. But what about the Florida Panthers? I mean, let's talk about what it would take or what differentiates the Florida Panthers roster from the New York Islanders roster. And, there's a lot of factors here. Let's start at the top. All right. The Florida Panthers have 3 players on their roster with 80 or more points. Islanders had none. You got Sam Reinhart with 94 points, including 57 goals. Matthew Tkachuk with 88 points. Alexander Barkov with 80. Having, guys who are star players like that helps. And, look, Bo Horvat, Matthew Barzal, they're good players to very good players, but none of them are as productive as the top 3. And, you could throw in Carter Verhaeghe, I think, safely for Florida to give them 4. That, means that Florida has 4 players basically with 72 or more points. Matthew Barzal had 80 points in 80 games. So, that's the closest the Islanders come to being able to match it. it's not just the star power that Florida has at the top. It's not that at all. And look, you can make an argument, although this year I don't think it's a good argument, but last year, for example, you can make an argument that Ilya Sorokin and Sergei Bobrovsky are both elite goalies, and that, in 2022, 2023, you could make the argument that Sorokin was the better goalie. It'd be close. You could make an argument for both sides, but this year, obviously, Bob was the better goalie. But the other thing is this. What does Florida have? Well, Florida has at least one solid puck-moving defenseman on all three of their pairs. You start with, Aaron Ekblad for sure. Brandon Montour is capable. And then, obviously, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Both of those guys are capable of moving the puck. And, the Islanders don't have anybody on their third pair who can come close to, even at this stage in his career, Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And then you have a shutdown defenseman paired with Ekblad in Gustav Forsling. Do the Islanders have that? Well, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when Adam Pelech and Ryan Polak were healthier and playing at a better level, a little more comfortable perhaps in the Barry Trotz system. Maybe they weren't as good as Gustav Forsling as far as being a shutdown guy is concerned, but they could compete. And then you had two rather than one in Pelech and Polak. So, there is that to have the shutdown guy. But look at the depth, okay? Look at the depth scoring that the Panthers have. And we've talked about, Sam Bennett is their second line center, Matthew Tkachuk, their second line winger, Evan Rodriguez filling in nicely on the second line. But look at the third line. Yeah, it was a trade deadline deal, but Vladimir Tarasenko, third line for the Florida Panthers. He is a credible goal scorer, even if he's no longer elite. He played 19 regular season games for the Panthers, 14 points in 19 games. That's on your third line. Anton Lundell, okay? Solid two-way player, but again, in the playoffs, giving you some more offensive juice, picking up when the top six are kind of struggling. You could turn to Tarasenko and Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen to give you a little bit of a jump. Kyle Oposo on the fourth line. Kyle is no longer a 25 goal a year guy. He's maybe a 10 to 12 goal a year guy. But he's still capable of putting the puck in the net. He's clutch. He's experienced. He gives the fourth line offensive juice, not consistently the way he did when he was, 25 or 26 with the Islanders, but well enough that, when the game is on the line, when the chips are down, he knows how to raise his game and contribute to the team's success. The depth on the Florida Panthers is significant. And then again, I think it's safe to say that, the Florida Panthers roster right now is a little bit more, it's younger overall than the Islanders. There are still veterans on this team, but the veterans that they have tend to be, still contributing a little more, like Tarasenko, or, there's not so many guys who are making a lot of money and not producing a lot in return. And I'm not saying that the Panthers don't have guys with bad contracts. Every NHL team does. But what role are they playing, and are they playing that role? Look at Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's on the wrong side of 30. Been in the league 13 years, okay? But he's a third pair defenseman. So if you get, 16, 18 minutes a game from him, including some of that going to be second power play unit kind of a thing, these guys have much more depth, Florida does, than the Islanders. They're more physical top to bottom than the Islanders are. They are younger. They have more top-end scoring talent, and they have players in the right roles to be successful. And if you look up and down the Islanders roster, they don't really have as much of that. Putting Casey Cizikas on the first line, or Hudson Fasching on the or Pierre Engvall on the second line, that's not maximizing your talent. That's not getting, guys ready to do their best. And then the other thing, quite honestly, that I think is clearly important, special teams, okay? Florida's power play, top 10 in the league, 8th. The penalty kill, also top 10, 6th. They also, when you have that on special teams, especially in the playoffs, that is a difference maker. And you compare that with the New York Islanders, who on the power play, the Islanders were, again, 19th. Got off to a better start, kind of slumped down the stretch, second half, let's say. And then the penalty kill, as we know, not just last in the league, but one of the top 10 historically bad penalty kills. Opposing teams scoring 28.5% of the time when they have the man advantage against the Islanders. These are the areas that the Islanders, that's the gap that the Islanders and Lou Lamoriello have to try to close during this offseason. And look, the Panthers probably not going to be able to keep this entire team together after this year, whether they win the cup or not. Some of these guys are rentals, no question about that. But, compare trade deadline moves and the thought that went into putting a team together to be successful in Florida compared to where we are with the Islanders. There's a lot of more depth, a lot more of a balance between younger and older players, more top-end talent, more scoring depth. The Florida Panthers, top to bottom, are in a different league talent-wise than the New York Islanders. And that's the gap you have to close with the Panthers, the Bruins, the Rangers, the Hurricanes. These are the teams you have to close the gap to if you want to be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. We've got a lot more to get to on today's show. We'll talk about Isaiah George, Islanders prospect. His junior career came to an end. We'll talk about Ruslan Iskhakov as we continue our player-by-player review of the Islanders. And then, for our Islanders birthday of the day, a Finnish defenseman who spent one season with the Islanders in 2001, 2002, and never did score a goal. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Islander fans, check out the odds on the Stanley Cup Final. Use your knowledge of the NHL to bet on FanDuel. You want to pick whether it's the Oilers to win or the Panthers to win, who's going to win the Conn Smythe Trophy, who's going to win Game 1. All of these things you can find odds for on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Well, make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube and the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Isaiah George, obviously a player who has done a lot for the New York Islanders, or at least a player who has done a lot for the London Knights in the junior season that just ended. And look, here's a player who was the 98th overall selection by the Islanders back in 2022. He has already signed an entry-level pro deal with the New York Islanders, with Bridgeport. So he will almost certainly start the season in Bridgeport. I think that's, a pretty safe bet under the circumstances. And, now the question becomes, how quickly can Isaiah George be NHL ready? And look, the team, London, lost a heartbreaker in the Memorial Cup. George did not have a great final, at the end of the tournament, but did have a good overall playoff. Played 18 games with London, 4 goals, 12 points, 4 penalty minutes. And, for the year, George had 6 goals, 30 points, and 54 penalty minutes, and was a plus 26 for the London Knights. He's 6 foot, about 200 pounds, and the Islanders need to, make sure they don't bring him along too quickly. He's signed a deal. He's a left-handed shot. I would say he needs at least 1 season at Bridgeport to season him and get him going, to be ready to make an appearance in the NHL. And that doesn't preclude the fact that if injuries hit, you could bring up Isaiah George for a game or 2 next year to get his feet wet and see what he can do. But, too often we have seen the New York Islanders bungle the way they handle some of their prospects. Either they brought them up too soon, like Josh Bailey or Nino Niederreiter, or they didn't give them a chance, much like Oliver Wahlstrom, where any mistake he made, he was going to ride the bench or be benched for the next game. So with Isaiah George, he has not played a game in the pros yet. Let's let him play in Bridgeport. Let's see what he could do. Most experts, scouting experts, believe that Isaiah George is, again, a year, maybe 2 years away from being NHL ready. And if that is indeed the case, the Islanders really need to take their time and make sure that he is ready. And, the best part of his game, skating and, doing a good job defensively of filling in gaps and playing positionally sound. And that's really good because that fits into Patrick Roy's system. Both the idea of skating and with the puck in transition and just, being in the right position to disrupt the zone entry of the other team. George basically indicated that he modeled his his style of playing defense after Miro Heiskanen of Dallas and Gustav Forsling, who we just mentioned, of Florida. So, that I think is positive. And right now, we're looking at Isaiah George as being one of the better prospects or the more impressive prospects in what is admittedly a struggling or not so deep New York Islanders prospect pool. So, again, I think Isaiah George is a smart hockey player. He's got a good hockey IQ. I like the way he plays the game, but at the same time, you can't let him be rushed to the NHL. And with the left shot defenseman right now, if you look at the Islanders roster on the left side, Adam Pelech, Alexander Romanov, and then, whether it's Samuel Bolduc or Mike Riley, that remains to be seen. But those guys are both left-handed shot defensemen if Riley resigns. And those are the guys that you'd have to beat out in order to, get that third spot on the left side in the everyday lineup for the New York Islanders. So we'll take a look at Isaiah George. I think he'll get a long look in training camp, and I think he deserves and has earned a long look in training camp. And then hopefully we will see what he can do. And look, if he blows everybody away, maybe he starts the season in the NHL. But I think, again, rushing him is the wrong way, and pulling him off the ice anytime he makes a mistake is also not the right way to help these young players develop confidence. Start him in Bridgeport. Let him gain confidence there. Adjust to the pro game, which, let's face it, the pro game, even the AHL game, is a step up from juniors. And let's also admit that Isaiah George was a little overaged as a junior. He's 20. Most of the players he's playing against are 17, 18. So, again, let's see what he does against professional competition and then give him a chance to help the Islanders maybe in 2025, 2026. All right. We have still got more to get to. We continue our player-by-player analysis of the Islanders today with Ruslan Iskhakov. We'll talk about him, whether the Islanders should and will re-sign him, and where he might fit into their plans. All that and a lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders with Ruslan Iskhakov. And, hey, he played one game during the regular season for the Islanders, had an assist, played one game in the playoffs, did not record any points. But the real story is what he did at Bridgeport. 18 goals, 50 points in 69 games. The year before that, 17 goals, 51 points in 69 games. So, no doubt, Iskhakov has established himself as, not a point-a-game player, but a solid player in the AHL. He is 23. He will turn 24 next month in late July. And look, in the two games that he played, and he didn't play a lot of minutes in either one, but he certainly looked like he belonged, okay? You can't sit there and say to me that he didn't look like an NHL player in both of those games. But it also was clear that the Islanders coaching staff, Patrick Waugh, they didn't trust Iskhakov. And look, we've seen what he did on highlight reels. Even if you never watched a Bridgeport Islanders game this year, go to YouTube and check out Ruslan Iskhakov, and especially some of those shootout goals. And we know how badly the Islanders need help in shootouts, how they've struggled over the last few years, really since Franz Nielsen was not re-signed as far as shootouts goes. So the issue with Iskhakov is he's 5'8", 170 pounds, and that may be, both of those numbers may be generous. And the concern is, what does he do without the puck? Is he good enough positionally and smart enough with his hockey IQ? And, you know, he's not going to win a lot of battles if it's Matthew Tkachuk and Ruslan Iskhakov battling along the boards for the puck. I could tell you right now, Iskhakov is not going to win a lot of those battles, okay? But is he good enough to slow down an opposing player, to impede his progress coming into the zone, to poke check the puck away, to be positionally responsible without the puck? The answer to that question has to be yes in order for him to earn a spot in the NHL. His contract is expired. Right now, he is officially a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. Will Lou Lamoriello try to sign him? Does he feel like he'll get a legitimate chance to crack the Islanders lineup? And part of the problem is, based on his style, you want him in your top six. He could play center. He could play wing. I think the Islanders should try to re-sign him, but only, and I mean only, if they plan on giving him a legitimate chance to play regular minutes with the Islanders, the New York Islanders, during the regular season. If not, and it's not that I don't think he has to earn it. He does have to earn it. But if he's not in the plans, if you don't think he's good enough, let him go, whether it's back to Russia or whether you trade his rights to get another prospect or a draft pick that can help this team. Do it, because that's the only way you're going to improve this team. If he's not part of the team's plans, get as much as you can for his rights. You don't want him to go back to the KHL when you get nothing. We'll see, but I'm hoping we see more of Iskhakov in a New York Islanders jersey come this fall. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. We're a day early. Thursday will be the 52nd birthday of former Islanders defenseman Marko Kiprasov, the native of Finland, 6 foot, 195 pounds, a third-round pick by the Canadiens back in 1994. Made his NHL debut with the Habs in 95-96, then headed back to Sweden and Switzerland, and then back to the Islanders, who he signed with in 01-02. Spent some time in Bridgeport, then 27 games with the New York Islanders. No goals, 6 assists, 4 penalty minutes, and an even plus-minus. Never really spent a lot of time with the Islanders. Finished his career back in Europe, played in France, played in Switzerland, played in Finland, but only played in 51 career NHL games, 10 assists, 12 penalty minutes. One of his better games with the Islanders, how about November 21st, 2001? Islanders hosting the Avalanche at the Nassau Coliseum. David Abashir, the goalie for Colorado. The Wizard of Oz, Chris Osgood, the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, our Islanders' birthday of the day, Marko Kiprasov ends up assisting on the game-winning goal along with Roman Hamrlik. The goal scored with less than 5 minutes left by Captain Alexei Yashin. That gave the Islanders a 5-4 win over Colorado, 24 saves for Osgood. As far as our Islanders' birthday of the day, Marko Kiprasov, he had an assist. He was a +2. He assisted on the game winner, and he played 16 minutes and 8 seconds in the game. So, happy birthday to Marco Kiprasov. He is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Every dayers tomorrow on the show, we'll continue our player-by-player look at the Islanders. Yeah, we're going to look at J.G. Pageau. Talk about his season and whether we think he can bounce back and whether he'll still be an Islander next year. Make sure you join us for that. Also, again, don't forget, check out the show notes. We are trying to get together with some Locked On Islanders listeners and viewers to try to have a little viewing party at a sports bar on Long Island. So head over to lockedonislanders.wordpress.com if you want to let us know if you're interested. And it would be great to get together and watch a little Stanley Cup hockey with fellow Islander fans and Locked On Islanders viewers and listeners. Until then, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.